What is the first thing you do when you get home? Bra off pajamas on edit. Thank you so much for the award. Closing parenthesis. Kiss my cat who meets me at the door. Take hit out of my pockets, change and take the dog out. Take off my shoes and put my wife's bra on. Take off my shoes and my bra. Hug and kiss the wife. Every day I come home, Shetri's to be there waiting for me. I can feel the stress of the day wash away the moment I see her, and it's my favorite part of my day. Wash my hands. Change into comfy clothes, pour a cup of coffee. Take off my human suit and message my real race about your weaknesses. Attend a cannabis seminar. I work from home. But right when I log out of work, I get dressed to leave for the gym.
What has been your most bone-chilling, hair-raising, let's get the hell out of here, experience? Exploring an abandoned high-rise, out of the blue my friend grabbed me by my collar from behind. I was about to step into an elevator shaft. After swearing at him, what the *UCK, he said, look, and I saw the drop of like 20 floors to a concrete bottom with broken metal rods sticking out. We went home. Has saved my life 100%. As a child camping, getting out of my tent to pee and coming back and just barely being able to make out eyes and something moving in the tent, I bolted to another tent and woke the others up. Turns out it was a raccoon and I had left a box of crackers in my tent I'd forgotten about. But at the time it was pretty terrifying. So, I've never had a really scary experience, but I did have an experience once where I went into panic mode and all I could think of was escaping the situation. I had this friend in college who really liked to drink. She had a big *SS house to herself, so would drink together a lot. One night we were outside smoking and one of her neighbors comes up the driveway to his door and is chatting with my friend. Eventually he invites us over for drinks and gaming. He shares the house with another guy. They're both young military guys. We're there a while, have a few drinks, played Worms on the 360 and they got to show off their entertainment setup, which for the time was enviable. They were really cool guys. We're shooting the hit and one gets up and just says, "Be back in a second." He leaves for a minute or two and then comes back. He walks in the room and stands facing the other guy who also stands up. They are there just staring intensely at one another for a while and things are real awkward. My friend and I are Then the one who had left reaches down, unzips his pants and whips out his AUK. I'm going to preface this by saying I have no problem with LGBTQ+. I don't care what any other consenting adults do in their free time, but I don't exactly want a front row seat. As the other guy proceeds to get into a kneeling position, I am in a full-on panic. I'm grasping at my friend whisper talking. Nat, we have to leave. She stares slack-jawed, unmoving. I'm just about to start climbing over the couch to escape when the guy kneeling firmly grasps the other dude's shaft and then yanks the whole thing right out. Then proceeds to stick the most realistic rubber ick you have ever seen to his forehead by a suction cup at its base and the two of them laugh uncontrollably. I lost many a night to a booze-filled blackout with that friend of mine, but I will never forget fate in 100 years. Ventured deep into an abandoned mineshaft on a mountainside on the island of Tasmania. We got to a point deep in the tunnel that was covered with hundreds of *SSIVE orb weaver sliders and we started hearing echoes of weird-ass sounds. Decided to turn back that. Driving Uber one night a couple years back. I picked up 4 guys from a club. Listening to them talk, I realized that 2 guys, one of them ordered the ride, had met the other 2 at the club and were on the way to get coke from one of their cousins. There was an odd vibe, some of the conversation didn't seem the most linear, and I was hyper-aware that these drunk dumbasses were heading with 2 strangers to a drug deal. And I was the one driving them. I did not want drugs in my car, and I was very aware that we might be on the way to an ambush. If we'd been heading anywhere remote or sketchy, I had to figure out how to end the ride. The 2 wannabe dealers kept trying to get in touch with their cousin via cell phone, went to an apartment just off a main street, and after both had gone into the building I just said, "Should believe?" to the guys and we did. I still don't know if it was just a ploy for a free ride. Guys too drunk or dumb to pull off a basic coke deal, or something nefarious that didn't finish. Hiking in the Rocky Mountains, on a trail I knew pretty well. I was leading a group of kids, maybe 20 or so middle school-aged children from the camp where I worked. I turned a corner and saw a jawbone of a deer. Pretty cool, showed it to the kids. Didn't have any flesh on it, so I assumed it was pretty old. 100 feet further down the trail I find another bone. Femur maybe. I specialized in insect populations, not deer anatomy. This one looked a little fresher. Another ways down, another bone. I'm getting a little nervous at this point, so I explained that we should probably turn around and head back. My students all groan that they want to see more dead stuff, but I shepherd them down the train and back to camp. 2 days later we got a call at the camp that someone had been attacked in the area by a mountain lion. Apparently a mountain lion had set itself up in the caves on the cliffside and it had gotten iced when someone got too close. I'm glad we left the area, even if my student would have loved to see more dead stuff. Used to work on an ambulance and the company that I worked for had more ambulances than there were firehouses, medic stations, to keep up with increasing call volumes, so we would do something called posting, which is where you park the ambulance somewhere within the area that you are servicing while you wait for a call. Was the midnight to 10 a.m. shift one night and it was really slow. On slow nights, we would try to find the darkest areas we could find to post in an attempt to catch some sleep. We find a church within a neighborhood whose parking lot had virtually no light, so we decide to park there. As soon as my partner put the rig in park, I instantly felt incredibly uncomfortable and unsafe. I didn't want to say anything to my partner as I literally had no reason to feel the way I was, but the feeling was almost overwhelming. A few minutes go by and my partner looks at me and says, "Hey Mani, don't feel right. Something just feels off. Do you want to get out of here?" I replied, "Yes," and we got the hell out of there. I have never really figured out why we both had that sensation and why it came on in that church's parking lot, but it sure did give me the creeps. My wife and I were on a search mission for some missing fern pickers. We were volunteers with the local search and rescue (SAR) team. We decided to stay in the search area that night and had built a pretty nice fire. We were sitting there and it was about 0200, hoping this dude would wander into camp. I had heard animals around us throughout the night. No surprise, we're in the middle of the woods. I'm used to animals stalking around outside my camp. I knew there were 2 animals, one each side ofus. It was at about that point when we heard a bird chirp. It came from about the place I figured one of the animals were. Then another, from the opposites. I immediately realized we were being watched and stalked by at least 2 cougars. We very quickly climbed into the back of my truck. It's got a camper shell and is outfitted for truck camping. A little bit different than the rest of the stories, but it gave me chills. My mom's best friend owns a farm about a half hour from where I grew up. We went there nearly every weekend to help with upkeep and caring for our horses. All day you could just feel a storm brewing. The wind, humidity, outside, greenish tint, and the clouds rolling in as the sun was setting. Right after supper it started raining, hard. A lot of wind and lightning too. I was looking out the window, across the yard, and thought I saw something above the barn on the far side of the yard. I was petrified. It looked like rotation in the clouds. And it started lowering down. I put it out to my dad. He said it was rain bouncing off the roof of the barn. We both looked out for a moment and clearly saw it suck back up into the clouds. I got goosebumps. We looked at each other for a second in disbelief, then he shrugged, and went back into the living room. I sheltered in the bathroom. The next day, we saw in the news that an F4 tornado ripped through a small town, Spencer, SD, about 24 miles from where we were. I got chills when I saw the news reports. Back when I was in college, a friend of mine showed up to hang out a few times with all kinds of bruises on his face, cuts, split lip, etc. He said it was some idiot at a party that he got into a fight with, but it kept happening, so I called all *hit. Finally I drug it out of him. He was going to an underground fighting ring, some backyard brawler shit, to make some extra money. So I convinced him to take me with him. I wanted to get in on it. I grew up in rough neighborhoods and fought a lot when I was younger, so I figured I could hold my own. So I went a few times. I did pretty good too, won 3 fights and made a little extra cash. The last time we went though, as we were leaving, we saw this kid that had lost his fights surrounded by a bunch of dudes afterwards. He didn't have the money to back himself. We figured he would just get a beat down, so my friend and I picked up the pace. We were halfway though the parking lot when we heard the kid screaming. I'll never forget that sound. I have no idea what they did to him, but hearing that we never went back. Was helping check cows on my family's ranch. Get out there in my non-4x4 car just a little before dusk. The cows were all kinda scattered, so I decided to just walk in so I don't stir them up too much and can get a better look. I was checking for baby calves. So I'm well into the field. Like a solid 5 minutes from my car at least. Looking around at all the cows, checking the ones that were looking kinda close on calving. I see some of the cows furthest away from me kinda stir, so I look and see something dark and large cat-shaped crouched low to the ground, slowly stalking some of the cows. Now, I live in West Texas, so jaguars aren't really a thing, but there had been rumors for years about this jaguar that stalked up and down the creek. It went right by our ranch. It probably was just a dark-colored mountain lion, but either way it was definitely not something I wanted to mess with, in the dark, a ways from a vehicle, with no gun. I am not ashamed to say I left the cows to defend themselves and ran as fast as I could through the field back to my car. I did check the next day and all cows were safe and accounted for. Once when I was like 8 years old, I lived in a trailer park with mostly normal but occasionally sketchy folks around. I was really bored at home and asked my parents if I could walk up the street to my friend's house, not very far, maybe just out of sight of my parents' trailer. It was like the middle of the day and we knew a lot of people on our street, so my parents said yes. So here I am, an 8-year-old little girl walking to my friend's house. Just as I got out of sight, I saw an adult man walking towards me straight ahead. Immediately have my alerts on cause I was alone of course and had never seen this dude before. I keep hoping he veers off on another course away from me, but he keeps coming towards me and I notice his eyes are locked on me and he's smiling. I got the creeps, but I was pretty close to my friend's house now. I looked around and realized there wasn't anyone else outside to witness anything. He finally gets close enough to say something to me, and thesis what made me run. He said, "Hey, do you think you could take your shoes off? Please, I want to see your feet." And I said, "Huh? What?" And he again to see my feet. Y'all, I turned around and sprinted so fast back to my house. I was terrified. I'm a criminal defense investigator. I had a murder case involving 2 brothers. The one accused of the murders was very autistic, and his brother was schizophrenic. The schizophrenic brother lived in a potato shack in the middle of the desert. I needed to talk to him several times throughout the course of the investigation, and since he didn't have a phone or electricity, I had to drive several hours out to his house and yell his name from the fence line until he came out of the shack. This investigation lasted for several years, and over time I developed a rapport with schizophrenic brother, and I kind of got to like him. He would talk your ear off about the aliens with golden ice and the underground tunnels that connect all the Walmarts in the country, but he was pretty entertaining, and part of me wonders how much it was a show. Schizophrenic brother eventually gets a girlfriend. She's a tweaker who has mistaken his schizophrenia for meth-induced psychosis. I talked to her a few times in jail when she was sober, and she was surprisingly charming and insightful. The last time I go to see schizophrenic brother, it's a dark winter night and tweaker girlfriend is there. She's lurking in the shadows and staring daggers at me the entire time I'm talking to him. I get off his conversation about the speakers in his fillings and walk back to my truck to leave. A minute later, schizophrenic brother comes running out and tells me that he wants to show me something in his shack. He's never invited me inside before, and I'm not thrilled by the prospect. The whole thing feels off to me, so I tell him I have to get going, and start the truck. The look of relief on his face when I declined to go inside convinced me that tweaker girlfriend was waiting behind the door with a hammer or something. A few months later I learned that she shot him in his sleep and stashed his body in an old refrigerator. She has since pleaded guilty to his murder. Edit, rapport, not report. Ice fishing on a far north lake, not a big lake, but known for good fishing. We fished a while, got nothing. Then, a large loud crrrrracccckkk and the ice split from one side of the lake to the other. Get to shore ASAP. One side of the now two different giant slabs of ice began to sink and incourse, so under the other half, water started running out onto the top of the ice. Get to shore, gently, ASAP, I yelled to my buddy. By the time we got to shore, the one slab of ice was beginning to break up, the other close behind. The ice practically self-destructed itself. We made it to solid ground, and lived to fish another day. I was driving back from a trip with a friend and my kids, at the time 4 and maybe 3-month baby. My baby was screaming, so I pulled into a gas station to change her and nurse her in the car. The store was very rural, but maybe 10 cars still there. They were closing as I was feeding her. I stood up and laid her in my driver's seat to change her diaper when a pickup truck with 2 men pulled up behind me. They were talking to one another and smiling the nastiest, creepiest smiles at me. I stared back for what felt like eternity. I handed my baby across to my friend and reached in my glove box and pulled out my .380 and kept it in the seat and never broke eye contact. They must have recognized the motion I made. BC they peeled out after that. They were gonna try and harm us. I must have been around 10 or 12 when this happened. I was walking back home one afternoon, around 3 or 4 p.m., after strolling around the neighborhood, which was usually very safe, friendly and quiet. I was on the opposite side of the block, the houses behind ours, which wasn't an issue because there happened to be a park that went across the whole block and connected to the other side, so you didn't have to go around the whole block, so I was only a few houses away. I went through the park, a park I had played at my entire childhood, without paying much attention, when about halfway through, this guy who I didn't know, definitely older than me, wearing a hoodie, started calling me. Dude, come over here one sec. What do you... Come here, I just want to ask you something. Okay, ask me from over there. No, come over, please. No, tell me from over there. At that point, another dude that was sitting next to him j's upset. I hear a, that's it, and they both stood up quickly and started making their way towards me. I can't recall how far they chased after me, but my instincts just told me to run like hell, and I did. To this day I still don't know if they were gonna mug me, if they were just taking the *ISS or what was happening, but it definitely scared kid me.